Hello and welcome back. I don't think I can ever start a video like
Normal.
average. Yeah, like it just can't happen.
It's not who you are as a
It's
person.
nope. It's gonna have
Not
to be
today.
myself. Not today. Okay, so welcome. And today we have a special guest on the show, Kelly Rush, K Rush, K to the Rush, Kelly Rush,
Crush.
crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly is a coworker of mine. We are both academic success advisors in the Office of Student Success and Advising. And Kelly has been a really pivotal part in a lot of the curriculum that comes from or is going to be happening in this class, as well as some of the other classes that we teach as an office. And one of the main concepts that I really admire Kelly for bringing to the conversation in our office and how advising works and how student success works is grit and growth mindset. And so I've asked Kelly to come on the show today to share a little bit about those two topics, because what Kelly and I have talked about in the past is that part of being an adult is to develop the skills and to have the skills to react to the situations that pop up, because there's no way that in our 10-week time together for adulting class FYS 207 we can teach you all of the things that you need to know to be perfectly prepared for every situation that you will encounter in life. But we think that with grit and growth mindset, you can react to the situations as they come up in a healthy and happy way. And so we want to give you some of those tools to react to situations as they come up, to change the way we view challenges, and where do we go from there. So, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Of
And
course.
tell us all of the things. Give us all of the knowledge.
All right. Well, just a little bit of background about me, just to give you a little context as far as like why I have kind of really like emphasized these two particular theories in education. So before I worked at Western, I was a high school principal and a high school social studies teacher down in Roseburg, Oregon, which is a pretty rural town. And I worked with students who would be considered at risk. So they had stuff like they'd been expelled from another school, might have a drug problem, they might have a probation officer, that kind of thing. So a lot of kids came to our school not only like with some behavioral stuff, but they also were pretty significantly behind academically. So it was an uphill battle working with these kiddos. And for me, one of the things that frustrates me the most is like when you get a guest speaker in your class and they come in and tell you about this really great theory, but they've never actually like seen it work, or it's been in very specialized situations. So for me, these two particular theories, growth mindset and grit, stuck out because I've actually seen them work with the whole spectrum of student. The students that are really, really far behind, we can, been able to get them to graduate, and then students that weren't necessarily behind, but had other social emotional things going on. And they've been really successful, gone on to community college and that kind of thing. So again, I think that one of the reasons that I like talking about this with students is because these are theories that you can put into place like as we're talking. That doesn't require any special equipment. You don't have to order anything, although I would recommend both of the books. And you can start this now, and you can start having a profound impact on your own life now. So the first theory I want to talk about is this idea. It's called growth mindset, and I'm talking about that first because the way I look at these two different ideas or concepts, growth mindset is really the theory. It's the idea behind everything, and then grit is how you actually get things done. So let's start with growth mindset. And so first off, Dr. Carol Dweck is the educator that came up with this particular theory. there are a bajillion different definitions of what growth mindset is. This is one I just pulled from the book, and that is the book. Growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your effort, strategies, and help from others. So what does that mean exactly? Essentially, what this is saying is, if you believe you can get better, you can. That's it. It's not super complicated. Like right now, if you are getting a B and you want to get an A, you can absolutely get an A. But you're going to have to put in some work, right? You have to, and sometimes mathematically, sure, you might not be able to, but this is kind of a general theory that if you apply enough effort, you will get the outcome you want. So there are two different mindsets talked about in the book, growth and fixed. So we're looking for a growth mindset, but a lot of people come in with fixed. So what does that mean? The biggest thing is people with a fixed mindset believe that your intelligence is static, so it's not going anywhere. You take an IQ test, that's your IQ. There's no changing it. That's actually false. You can change your IQ. I don't know if it can go down, but it can definitely go up, which makes a lot of sense, right? It's a test. So the more information you have that is relevant to the test, you would do better in it. With a fixed mindset, though, because they think that intelligence is static and you can't change it, there are a few things that they try and avoid. So challenge is one of them. Because if you are challenged and you can't do something, then someone with a fixed mindset is going to believe that essentially, like, if you can't do it from the get-go, then you are never going to be able to do it. They also do their darndest to stay away from obstacles. So kind of the same thing with challenge, they give up pretty quickly. So this might be you, or you might know a friend, they try something out. It doesn't go well the first time and they're out. They peace out, they're done. That's very fixed mindset, because essentially if you put in effort, then it's showing that you don't have the natural talent and you have to try real hard, or even try at all. And people with a fixed mindset don't really believe in that. And obviously I think that we all know that that's not how it works. I think you could ask Michael Jordan how much he practiced, or Steph Curry. Sorry, I go on an NBA rant because it's my jam. But I think that's one of the things you see. Someone like Steph Curry, who's one of the best shooters in the NBA, he spends probably more time shooting than anyone else in the league, simply because that's his craft. He knows what he needs to work on and he pinpoints that. So effort is sort of the lifeblood of someone with growth mindset, and it is kryptonite for someone with a fixed. They're also people with a fixed mindset, not a big fan of criticism. They don't want to hear what they've done wrong. They don't want to hear feedback. If they do get feedback, they pretty much ignore it, or they say, oh, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and here's why. And then finally, success of others. If someone else is successful, it means that they are not, and therefore they're not a fan. So you can see, like, someone with a fixed mindset is pretty insular. They care a lot about themselves and their own personal success. They don't see, essentially, like, if they have to try, they don't want to. So then we go to a fixed mindset, and it's the exact opposite, right? So we're going to embrace challenge. We're going to say, yeah, bring it on. Like, push me harder. I want to get better. They're going to continue and persist despite setbacks, despite obstacles. They're going to apply as much effort as necessary to master whatever they're doing. You will find someone with a growth mindset, especially like when you get into a place where you're in the workforce, someone with a growth mindset, they want a performance review. They want to hear like, sure, it's nice to hear that I'm doing well, but like, what do I do to get better? And it's always about, tell me how I've improved and how I get better. And then obviously they find success when other people have success. They're a big fan, because it's, again, like, even if it's not their success, they're seeing a path to the success that they might want, or perhaps it's a path that they blazed, and so they helped that person through that. Ultimately, though, everything is a team effort with collective knowledge. So the thing is, it's never like, I would say that I don't live and breathe growth mindset and grit, but I like it a lot and I talk about it a lot. Um, and there are things that I still have a fixed mindset about. And it's a constant work in progress. Everybody is a mixture. And it just depends on your personal perception as far as like what you have a growth mindset about and what you have a fixed mindset about. But the thing that you can do is, when you start thinking this way enough, when that thought pops into your head, it's so easy just to redirect and really the biggest, like the easiest way to do that is if you tell yourself, I can't play in the NBA, and we all know that I can't, but it would be yet. I can't play in the NBA yet, right? It's the power of yet. Because it's saying like in the future I might be able to. Now if I grow a foot, maybe I can play in the NBA, but being 5'4", it seems improbable. Also a girl, so that doesn't seem to help. But so everything is within moderation, and you have to be realistic.
I'm so sorry.
What happened?
Someone with like a trailer situation was just like blasting Frozen with
What?
the police escort. They're going through all the neighborhoods, and there's Elsa and a big blow up Olaf, and they're waving on a thing.
Shut your mouth.
And they're like blasting Frozen. And so I was like, I thought it, because I heard the beep of the police siren, and I'm like, uh-oh, something's going down outside. But it's Elsa and Olaf.
You just want to run out and hug them, don't you?
I screamed out the window. I was like, yes. Cool.
Good.
Do you want to keep going, or do you want to start our recording over?
No, can you just cut it from here?
No, I can't cut it from here. I didn't pause the recording.
Oh, I don't want to do it again.
Let's not do it again. Let's just keep going.
Okay.
Don't think it's funny. It's funny.
Hi. Okay.
So sorry, everyone, but I mean, Elsa was outside.
Elsa was outside.
And
so.
The cold never bothered me anyways.
Never bothered me anyways. Okay.
Hello.
Okay. So now we've talked about growth and fixed mindset. So how do we encourage using and applying growth mindset in our own lives? And I think that one of the biggest ways to do that is just what I was talking about. When you catch yourself speaking or thinking in a fixed mindset way, you self-correct, right? And you'll probably have to catch yourself doing that multiple times. I think, where we see a lot of this is, I'm not a math person. I'm never going to get math. I've never understood it. And I used to be like that, but I think it's pretty simple to simply say, like, I'm not a math person yet. Because here's the thing. It's math, and we're not, like, especially like math 111. It's college algebra. We can all do it. It might take you more effort than me, and maybe it might take me more effort than Gabby. But I think that ultimately, the level of effort it just depends on us and our own skill set. So, and then also I think noticing when other people are speaking in a fixed mindset, and I think this is especially important with children, is when we see them thinking in that fixed mindset way, it's simple to correct them. And really it's like that power of yet, adding yet to any sentence can do that. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on something that's called false growth mindset. And so I would like to talk about this because it's something that can happen, I would say, fairly easily. So it's this idea that you say all the right things, but you don't actually do them. And it's one thing to say something, but you're not actually living and breathing and practicing growth mindset if you say, yeah, anyone can do anything, but in reality, you don't actually think that, or you don't apply that. And so I think it's important that our words match our actions, and because people pay attention to both. And so I think that it's important to remember that if we're saying the things, we got to do the things too. Anything to add to growth mindset, Gabby, before we switch over to grit?
Just that in the first week's assignment, we talked about our personal values, and a lot of people were mentioning that they highly value integrity and accountability. And I think that that plays into like that false growth mindset. Like if you would give some piece of advice or help somebody else see things in a growth mindset way, you also have to try and do that for yourself as best as you can.
Yeah, very true. And it's super easy to spot it in someone else and be like, hey, you're not thinking growth mindset. Harder to do it with ourselves, for sure. It's a good point. Okay, so that's a brief overview of growth mindset. Now let's talk about grit. And grit is, again, like I said, sort of it provides some of the important pieces of like how to actually continue to persist, especially in the face of challenge. So here's again, like a random definition of grit that I felt fit it best. So grit is passion and sustained persistence applied toward long-term achievement with no particular concern for rewards or recognition along the way. Combines resilience, ambition, and self-control in the pursuit of goals that take months, years, or even decades. So just to start, grit was discovered by Dr. Angela Duckworth. And she has a really, really great TED Talk, and I'm not sure if that is assigned. Oh, it is. It's only like 5 or 6 minutes long, but you'll see she comes from a super unique perspective, and she's done a lot of research on this topic. So grit has two primary components, passion and perseverance. So the thing with passion is we all have that, or we like to think that, we're passionate about something, it's our major, it's our career field, or whatever that is. Yeah, I'm sure that you have all felt like super passionate, and then like 2 weeks later you're like, and I'm done, because it's, like it's just not your jam, or it's really hard, right? And you just don't want to continue. So one of the things that Dr. Duckworth says is enthusiasm is common and endurance is rare. And so that's really that point, right? So it's super easy to get excited about something. It is much harder to sustain and to keep working in the long term. And a lot of times, like, especially we're going to talk a little bit about goals later, but when we're thinking about like reaching our ultimate goal, that's a long time coming. I mean, I think I've been in education now for a decade. And I'm nowhere near reaching my goals, right? But every position I take or every new project I take on, it's helping me reach my ultimate goal. And then I think that another point for you all to remember is that we develop the capacity for long-term passion and perseverance as we get older. And most of you are, in your teens still or early 20s, and you're still working on it. So don't be so hard on yourself, like, oh, I just, I keep giving up on things. It's totally fine. You're still figuring it out. Like me, I'm old now, so like I feel like I should probably like stick to it, and I have. But I think while you're on that path to discovery, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really just paying attention. Like pay attention to what you really are passionate about, and you have the ability to have that endurance to stick with that. So there is a way to test your grit or to see what your grit score is, and that's just the grit scale. It's super simple. It's only like 8 questions, and the big thing with this is like obviously you can skew these results, right? You can put whatever be honest, because this is another thing that's not static, right? This can change depending on where you are in your life. So you're going to get, when you fill this out or when you complete this, you get 2 scores. You get a passion score and a persistence score. So one is typically going to be higher than the other. My persistence score is higher than passion. So passion's a 4, persistence is 4.8. Not a big fan of starting something and not finishing it. So even if I am miserable, still probably going to finish it because that's just who I am as a person. And so it'll be interesting to see what your scores are. Again, like you can find, I don't know if this is either in your class or it's like online. It's pretty easy to find.
And I assigned it, so they should have it right now while we're talking about it, actually.
Awesome. So the thing to remember is it doesn't, like, whether or not whatever score is higher, you just know that with the other one, you have to maybe focus a little bit more on. So luckily for me, I feel like passion, that is pretty easy for me to define at this point in my life. So even though it's a 4, like, I'm not all that worried about it. For me, the persistence score is more important because it shows that I'm just going to keep going and sticking with it, which honestly is probably why I have achieved what I have achieved up to this point. Simply because I never looked at a situation where and was like, no, I don't know if I can actually do this. I have always looked at a situation like, yeah, I got it, even if I had no idea. I mean, I was a high school principal at the age of 27, and I had like just recently gotten out of a master's program, and it was an incredibly challenging situation. But at any point, there was no point when I was like, oof, I don't know if I can do this. It's like, all right, let's see what's next. Right? Like, it's just like, let's do this. And everything's a learning experience. So even if it was it was hard, still learned so much from it. And so that's another thing too, is understanding that every opportunity or every experience is an opportunity, and it's whatever you take from it. So even though, like, my time being an administrator was really hard because of the population I worked with, it was still probably, I learned more than I could have anywhere else. So for me, it was worth it. So there are 3 different things that we kind of talked about: talent, skill, and effort. So talent is essentially what you're born with, right? So that ability to swim super fast, I'm thinking Michael Phelps, right? Like that homie, like he's got some talent that I do not have. But the equation for achievement looks like this. So you're going to have talent multiplied by your effort. So no matter what level of talent you start with, if you apply the appropriate amount of effort, you can achieve at the same level and have that same skill. So say Michael Phelps starts with a talent level of 100 and you start with a talent level of 10. If you apply more effort than Michael Phelps does, a lot more, then you theoretically could achieve at the same level as him. And then after you've acquired skill, you're going to apply more effort, and then you're going to actually achieve. So the important thing to see here is that effort is in both of these equations. It factors in twice. Everything else factors in once, effort's twice. And that's really like what we need to take away from grit. It's all about how much you try. Right? If you continue to try despite challenges and obstacles and failures, ultimately, in the end, you will end up succeeding, and you're going to be so much more skilled, and your achievement will be higher if you persisted. So that is just explaining what I just told you. And then we're going to talk about my friend Will Smith. I know it's random, but so Will's actually in the grit book, but it's really interesting because he speaks and writes and tweets about in a way that is very growth mindset and grit, but he never uses those words. And again, like, we're just putting a label on these concepts and these ideas, but people have been living this and doing this. And some of our most successful people that we know It's because they do these things. So you can see a quote I pulled from him. I never really viewed myself as particularly talented. Where I excel is ridiculous, sickening work ethic. Um, and then the separation of skill and of talent and skill is one of the greatest misunderstood concepts for people who are trying to excel, who have dreams, who want to do things. Talent you have naturally, skill is only developed by hours and hours and hours of beating on your craft. So here's someone who is incredibly talented, as a speaker, as an actor, as a musician, and he doesn't even see himself really like as that talented. What he sees himself as a really hard worker. And that is how you become successful. I put that finger up because it's very important. Okay, so goal setting is actually going to be one of the most important things that you're going to want to do, because if you don't know what you're persisting towards, seems kind of pointless. So Dr. Duckworth talks about this thing. So you're going to have levels of goals, and you're going to have a top level goal, which she calls the ultimate concern. So the ultimate concern is going to be that goal that you hold on to, kind of no matter what. And you might not have this yet because you're still figuring it out, and that's okay. For me, my ultimate concern, which is like when someone asks you, well, why do you do that? It's kind of like, well, because I do, right? There isn't really like a huge justification. It's just like, this is what I'm doing. This is what's most important to me. So for me, it's helping students who are underrepresented at the college level, and specifically students that struggle academically, because I think that a lot of times those students are, most of the time, they're all very academically capable, just not necessarily like having the best go of it. And there are probably lots of other factors. So for me, I like to represent and advocate for people that I feel like don't have a voice. So that's my ultimate concern. So then I have mid and low level goals that all relate to those things, right? So I do, I teach a class for suspended students. I present at conferences. I watch webinars. I do research, right? All of those things are pointing towards my ultimate goal. So the big thing for you all is to remember that it's okay to give up a goal, and it doesn't mean that you are not gritty or you don't have growth mindset. And that's especially true at the low level. So for instance, say you're getting a social science degree and you take a psychology class and a sociology class in one term. You fall in love with psychology, and sociology you want to throw out the window. So hopefully we can still get a passing grade in both classes, but one of the things that you can eliminate is sociology from your degree. You don't need it. If you're getting a social science degree, you can take psych, history, political science, econ. You got lots of options. Or maybe you narrow it and you decide you want to get a psych degree, so an offshoot of social science, much more specific. We would essentially just cross off the low level goal of, say, sociology or social science, because ultimately it's you're eliminating, and sometimes in the beginning it's just as important to eliminate as it is to add. So understanding what we don't want to do is going to help us understand what we do ultimately actually want to do. So it's totally fine if you're giving up on those low level goals. The ones that you hold dear is like when you're able to identify your top level goal or your ultimate concern. That's the one that we hold pretty fast too. And the other thing I will say is, this is not like, I want to be a doctor and then that's our goal. That doesn't work, because anyone can set that kind of goal. How are you going to do that? How long is that going to take you? What kind of schooling do you need? What kind of experience? Do you need to volunteer? What kind of grades? I need to know those things, and actually to be able to make that goal a reality. So I highly recommend using like the SMART goal method, where it's going to ask you specific information. How are you going to measure it? How are you going to know when you've achieved? What's your timeline? All of those things, it's super important, because if you don't have that information detailing the way you actually achieve your goal, you're never going to achieve it, because how are you going to know when you've met it? So I would say, like, if you're doing goal setting for yourself, definitely consider doing more than just that simple, like, I'm going to be an astronaut, and then and we hope that happens. Okay, so then once you have the ability to have identified that ultimate concern, you want to be super intentional about the way you grow your skill at that point. So even at the expert level, you are still practicing. So I keep going back to Steph Curry. Sorry, he's just such a great shooter. So he would be considered like an expert, right? He's like one of the best shooters in the NBA. But you know that he practices all the time. Here's the thing. Does he practice free throws? For sure, right? Everyone does in the league. But is that going to be the primary focus of his practice, or is maybe like a mid-range jumper? Maybe that's going to be what he needs to focus on, right? Gabby's laughing at me because I'm a basketball nerd.
You
Sorry.
lost me, but it's fine. I'm trying to keep up.
It's fine. It's just in between the key and the 3-point line. It's in the middle. He's a great 3-point shooter and he's good at the basket, but so that's where he would want to focus. Wow. Sorry, tangent. So that's the thing. Like, he's going to identify a specific skill he needs to work on. He's going to get feedback from his shooting coach, and then he's going to set himself a goal. So maybe yesterday he was able to shoot 30 in a row from the mid-range point, and then the next day he wants to shoot 31, right? So it's like a stretch goal is, here's what I can do, I just do a little bit more. And so we keep inching until, and that's how we grow. Because you can do the opposite. And so the quote I pulled was, some people get 20 years of experience while others get 1 year of experience 20 times in a row. So if Steph Curry only shot free throws because he's really good at it and makes him feel good when he makes all those shots, sure, that part of his game will be great, already is, but the rest of his game is not going to develop, and that's where he's weaker, right? So we need to find where we are vulnerable, where we are weak, and then we build that up, and we use that for stretch goals. So especially once you get to the point where you have identified your primary goal and you're working on your smaller goals to make that happen, you want to make sure you're being super intentional about how you're practicing and what you're doing. And then there's this idea of hope, suffering, and optimism. So really, growth mindset is a bit of what would be considered learned optimism. So it's super hard to live and breathe growth mindset and grit without being somewhat of an optimist, because you have to believe that pretty much anything is possible if you apply the right amount of effort. So it helps if you're an optimist. That you don't have to be. But the other piece that I feel like I appreciate and is really helpful about growth mindset and grit is that it's this top quote. So it isn't suffering that leads to hopelessness. It's suffering you think you can't control. Because here's the thing. Sometimes it super sucks to be in a growth mindset and be in the weeds, right? You're like writing 5,000 papers and you are bogged down with all of the things that you have to achieve in order to get to your goal. And it sucks. I'll give you that. However, there's an end point, right? You know it's going to end. And you also know that ultimately it's going to lead you to this thing that's going to make you super happy. Sometimes we got to suffer a little bit to have a lot of happiness. And so again, like, it's not like we're in the weeds and we're writing all these papers and we're doing all these things that we hate just because we're doing them for a purpose. And I think that we know it eventually will be over. And I think that can be super helpful when you're going to need to give yourself a pep talk, because at some point you're going to want to quit. That's just how it is. And so another quote, optimists habitually search for temporary and specific causes of their suffering, whereas pessimists assume permanent and pervasive causes are to blame. So essentially, an optimist, someone with a growth mindset, be like, okay, so why am I suffering and how do I move away from that? And how do I control it, right? How do I regain control? Whereas someone who's more pessimistic is going to be like, nope, this is it. This is the universe telling me not to do this, or making me suffer just to suffer. And again, like, that's a super fixed mindset. So again, I'm not saying you all have to be optimist. I mean, I would highly encourage it. But this idea that hope, suffering, and optimism are all intertwined with each other, especially with these particular theories, but it's mostly just outlook, and it's all about mindset. Okay, so that was my overview of grit. Any comments, questions, concerns from the Gabster? Lovely. Well, my conclusion bubble is just one thing, because obviously I had to throw Will Smith in there again. But really, it's just this idea that our mindsets have an incredible amount of power. We can literally change the way we experience the world, simply by changing the way we look at it and the way we think about it. And it's super powerful, and something that, as someone who didn't really believe it until I saw it work, it's something that you can do like fairly quickly. So I encourage you to give it a shot. Start paying attention, see when you're in a more fixed mindset, and see what you can do to pull yourself out and give yourself that little pep talk you need to keep going and to persist.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
And I just, before we peace out for the day, I just want to make sure that we're clear that grit and growth mindset are not meant to be like blanket prescriptive things of like, if you're just in a growth mindset, you won't feel depressed anymore. Because as some folks with some mental health diagnoses, that's not a thing. Can't just like will things away. But when we do have some options on how we respond to situations and challenges in our lives, we need to have a guide of what we should be doing so that we can keep ourselves in check of like, okay, is this my depression making it really hard for me to have a growth mindset right now? Okay, let's figure something else out about how to handle this and how to manage ourselves. But I want that to be really open, and I'm happy to share more with folks on a one-on-one conversation. But like, this isn't a like, just be optimistic and all of your troubles will go away. No,
I wish. Well, and that's really the thing about grit is like, yeah, sure, we can be optimistic, but be prepared to put in a significant amount of work to make it happen. Nothing happens simply because you have talent or because you're skilled or whatever, right? Like, you have to put in effort. And obviously, like, there are situations where this doesn't work. Like, if you break your leg, like, we're not going to be so optimistic that it heals itself. We got to go to the doctor. But what we could control is the way we respond to it. The way we respond to, okay, I'm on crutches for 6 to 8 weeks. Am I going to hole up in my apartment, or am I going to still get out in the world even though it's hard? Right. And that's the difference, right? It's all about its outlook.
Yeah. And sometimes it means finding buddies that can help you determine if you're holding yourself to the standards that you're wanting. Like, hey, can I run this by you because I'm having a really hard time thinking about this in the way that I know that I want to be thinking about this, but I can't find it. I can't find the growth mindset in this situation. And Kelly and I do that for each other. And so that's part of finding someone that will do that with you. And if you don't have someone in your personal life, then that's what an academic success advisor is for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do. And I would say, like, I do that on a pretty regular basis. Like, growth mindset and grit are regular parts of pretty much every meeting I have, even if it's not specific. I don't necessarily like say those things every time. But I think that's especially true with my success students or students I meet with on a regular basis, simply to do check-ins, and it can have a profound effect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kelly. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we?
I don't think so, but if, like Abby was saying, if you have any interest in talking about this further or meeting with me, I'm happy to do that. I'm in WCS, the scheduling system,
Mhm.
and I do phone and and video appointments. So super happy to meet with any of you if you would like to. And thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and this our teaching assistant just decided to show up.
Look at that little chubby cat.
Well, this baby and Storm's growth mindset example for today is that she may not be able to catch the laser pointer yet.
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 She's going to keep trying.
She's got to
her
keep
hardest.
trying to get that laser pointer.
She tries so hard.
She's going to get it. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.